Welcome to the Savvy Dentist podcast with Dr. Jesse Green, the show where great dentistry meets great business. Listen in each week as we bring you an inspiring person who will share their story, ideas and business techniques to help you create a practice and a life you love. And now introducing your host, Dr. Jesse Green.
Jesse Green here at Savvy Dentist, the show where great dentistry meets great business. And today I'm so pleased and thrilled to be able to welcome back to the studio Dr. David Phelps. Many of you will know that David is the founder of a dental mastermind group called Freedom Founders, and that particular group is aimed at helping dentists develop a plan B so that you can build wealth outside of your practice. David is an author of several books, and in particular his book From High Income to High Net Worth for Dentists is a brilliant read, and I'd encourage everyone to get a hold of it. What I really love about David in particular, though, is his ability to look at the future, see the trends, spot the opportunities, and also point out the risks and potential potholes along the way. And so in this particular conversation, we talk a lot about the state of the profession, how to position yourself to take advantage of opportunities, but equally where the risks lie and how to avoid problems down the track. David is incredibly bright, incredibly insightful, and again, what he talks about comes from the school of being in the trenches. He's done this. He knows it. It's his day-to-day bread and butter. And what I love about David and everything that he talks about is it's salient, it's timely, and it just plain works. So I know that you're going to want to have a pen and paper handy because everything that David shares is really worthy of getting it down on paper and implementing it straight away. So without any further ado, here's Dr. David Phelps, the founder of Freedom Founders Mastermind for Dentists. Dr. David Phelps, welcome back to the Savvy Dentist podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to come and hang with us. How are you?
Jesse, it's great to be back with you. It looks like the sun is just coming up over your shoulders, so thank you for getting up early, apparently, by your daytime to do this with me. It's always fun to be with you.
Yeah, look, I really appreciate you hanging out with us, mate, and I know you're on the road, so this is a special episode because David's in Denver, Colorado, correct?
Yes, I am.
Wonderful. David, I wanted to talk to you. Look, I always love talking to you, and we have the opportunity to catch up at various masterminds that occur around the place. And every time I catch up with you, I leave with an insight, a piece of wisdom that A, makes me think and ponder, and B, when I do that thinking and pondering, I come away with an insight that's really useful. And firstly, I want to say thank you to you for that. But I wanted to have a conversation with you today a little bit around the trends in dentistry, because there is a saying that when America sneezes, Australia catches a cold, and what happens in the United States typically follows in our country. So I wanted to have a look into the crystal ball, see what things we might expect, and really talk about some plan Bs around that as well, because I think it is an interesting time. So I'm wondering if you could share with us your perspective on the state of the nation from the dental profession perspective.
Sure, Jesse, glad to. And, we have spoken quite a bit in the past, and I know there are a lot of similarities. So, yeah, we may be trending maybe a little bit ahead of your country, but I know there's so much that we have in common in our profession. And, I want to preface what I'm going to say by saying that this is not all negative. This is not all bad. You and I both agree, as other people within our influence and thought leaders, that change is inevitable. Change is part of life. And we don't like change. Most of us would rather just get into a routine and have everything working well and not have to blink or think or just do and enjoy life. That would be maybe wonderful. But on the other hand, it's just not the way it works. So we are undergoing a lot of turbulence, a lot of upheaval in the industry, the dental profession, healthcare overall, as is happening in your country. It's being taken over, if you will, or consolidated. We've talked about consolidated ownership by the corporate entities. There's lots of big money that has found medicine and dentistry and other affiliated professions to be a great opportunity for them to get yield. And there's a lot of money behind them. They can source capital at such a lower cost that allows them, the corporate entities, to just come on like gangbusters and consolidate practices and add marketing and expand hours and hire young dentists that are unfortunately laden with debt and need a good job to be able to utilize those young dentists. I'm not going to say that you might say utilize. there's some negative connotation to that for sure, but it's the place where the young dentists have to be. And I think this is an unfortunate trend, but it is what it is. So we have to be realistic about it and say, okay, with each different segment of someone's career, so we talk about the young dentists who are coming out today and facing what seem to be insurmountable odds for many of them. And I think many of them are questioning, unfortunately, now that they're out of school and they have that sunk cost fallacy, meaning you've put so much time, effort, and cost into your career that like you can't turn back now. So like, what do? I got to go forward with this. So it seems insurmountable to a lot of them. We have some that are more mid-career and yet probably still have a lot of debt. They're seeing their margins, the profit margins being squeezed because insurance companies are dictating to the rank and file what they can charge, right? And they feel like, well, there's no way out. If I don't accept the insurance companies, then my patient pool dries up and I'm out of business. So I just have to do it. And so they do that, but it continues to drive down the profit margins, leads towards burnout. We have doctors on the end of the spectrum who would like to think they're towards the end of practice. And their concern is do I have enough? Do I have enough in assets to retire? As long as someone's working and producing active income, even though it may be hard, maybe hard physically to do it, but as long as one has the blessing and opportunity to do that, you can keep your head above water. But the idea is some point in time to be able to enjoy life, right? And to take the fruits of your labor and convert those into, I'd like to enjoy time with my family and travel and do things that I was hoping I could do by the time I was, say, 60 years old, right? Many people are afraid to do that because they don't know if they have enough money and they don't know how to orchestrate that into sustainable cash flow for the next 20 or 30 years of a life, right? So this is kind of the conundrum that we see.
Yeah, look, I think that's a really interesting segment to start. There's the early career, the mid-career, and the later career. And rather than going through chronologically, I'd love to start with the late career, guys, because one of the things that being a little older, having some grey hairs affords us is the ability to reflect and look backwards. And so you can only join the dots looking backwards, as Steve Jobs is famous for saying, and it's much harder to join them forward. So for the younger guys listening, I think it's always useful to be able to hear the perspective of the older members of the profession because there are some real pearls of wisdom. But coming back to the retirement and not knowing whether they have enough, knowing where the goalposts are, what should I be aiming for? Because for some of the guys in their 50s and beyond, they might be thinking, oh my goodness me, that ship has sailed. And I don't necessarily think it has, but I'd love to just talk about how do you know when you've got enough? How do you know where to set the goalposts? And equally, I think that's really useful for the younger guys listening as well because it gives them something to aim for. And of course, they've got a longer time frame to be able to achieve that with compounding and so on. So perhaps we could just start there. How do you know what's enough?
Well, first it starts with lifestyle, right? Just starts with your lifestyle. I call it lifestyle burn rate. And that's whatever someone decides it should be for them, their family, they and their spouse will determine what that should be. And so, where you decide to live makes a big difference. Cost of living is different, and certainly in the U.S. from coast to coast versus the Midwest, the mid part of the country, lower cost living down south, lower cost. So where you choose to live, how important that is to you. Are you planning to, or did you go through a lot of cost to send kids to school? A whole other discussion. I could spend a podcast on what I think about that, but I won't here. And then what you predict your cost in the future. That's a tough one too. So anticipating cost of living as one goes forward, particularly I think in healthcare. Healthcare is certainly still very up in the air for a lot of people in terms of what that's going to look like and what one's needs might be. So there's definitely some unknowns you can't totally plug in, but certainly you have some control over lifestyle. So once you determine what lifestyle looks like for you, it's kind of easy to back in. You've got to figure in for taxes. And actually we have a cool little resource tool, Jesse, which I'll make available to your listeners. It's called the Retirement Calculator. And it helps people in a relatively easy, quick way to go through and get at least a good ballpark. As you said, where do you set the goalposts? But it starts with what you feel like you need to have to live the life you want to once you're through with active income. In other words, you're not going to go to work anymore. Now, if you want to, you could add to that. Let's just say you want to say, I want my option to be, if I don't want to work one more day, I want to take what I've got with the assets I've accumulated already after the sale of my business, my practice, paid the taxes, and now this is what I've got. The problem for our older docs, and this is not just in dentistry, it's across the board in all businesses, but have I learned how to orchestrate my investment assets, the capital I have, whatever, if I learned how to orchestrate that into actual sustainable cash flow. See, most people are sold a financial plan called accumulation. Very, very well-intended financial advisors who got their training off of Wall Street, selling the typical Wall Street paper products, stocks, bonds, annuities, insurance products. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with those, but the problem with those, it's all based on accumulation. The accumulation theory says, doctor, go to work, pay, build your business, build your practice, take discretionary income after you pay your taxes and your lifestyle. You need to have this much left over, or you should, and you start putting that on a disciplined basis into these products, these diversified products, which we're going to give you. At least the discipline's there, right? That's a good thing. But the problem is, there really is like, do I have enough? And that's the problem. Is like, I don't know if I have enough because I was just told to accumulate, to stack up this biggest stack as I can. And the closer I get to when I want to get off the treadmill, the scarier it is, because no one really has shown me how do I take these assets that I've accumulated, that I've worked really hard to get there, but how do I not turn those into cash flow? That's the problem. And that's why I talk a lot about a plan B. Now, I'm very biased towards real estate. I'll just be upfront and say that. I've been living it. I've invested in it for almost just shy of 4 decades. I've gone through, up and down cycles here in the US, major recession 10 years ago, and I know how real estate can work. It can be just as risky as anything else if you do it the wrong way, if you speculate. But the thing I like about real estate, Jesse, is that I know how to turn real estate into sustainable, predictable, inflation-hedged cash flow, and that will last me the rest of my lifetime. And if I so desire, pass on to my heirs or give to charity, whatever. That's what I put my father into, my late father, who just passed away 6 months ago. 3 or 4 years before he passed, I converted with his blessing, a little by little, his assets into secured real estate notes receivable. And he was so thankful. He said, "Thank you so much because you gave me security that I knew I wasn't going to run out." And he didn't. He didn't even. He was actually adding to his principal. So this stuff works. But it's the scary part for most of the doctors who want to get out.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting thing as well, David, because knowing where the goalposts are is critical. And as you say, everyone's goalposts will be slightly different depending on their lifestyle burn rate. So there's obviously some nuance and subtlety there. So again, we need to do our own calculations around that. But when it comes to converting your business into an ongoing annuity or revenue stream, once you've disposed of it or whatever, you mentioned you've got a bias for real estate, which, I love real estate too, because I can see it, touch it, feel it. And that's not always the same if you're dealing with notes or whatever, but there is so many wonderful things you can do with it. What I wanted to ask you specifically for the older docs who might be listening to this, and I'm using your dad as an example, I'm getting the impression that there's a bit of hope because it's not the accumulation process where you're relying on the discipline and time to get there. There are some things that you can do right now to create a revenue stream that will last longer than you.
Yeah, definitely. There's just the rate of return. And again, I'm very conservative. I'm very conservative in virtually everything I do. And so when I invest in real estate today, I'm not gambling. I'm not speculating. I'm not basing what I do on the fact that we've had an up market now for the last 8 years. That's not going to continue. I know it won't. Historically, I've seen the down cycles. So it's about knowing how to invest. It really comes down in the real estate markets, Jesse, to really who you know. It is an insider's game, unlike the Wall Street financial markets where an insider's game will put you in jail. In real estate, because it's an inefficient marketplace, in other words, it's local. It's local. And so you have to know people. You have to have a network. And that's the whole key. That's the key to everything in life, not just investing in real estate, but, Jesse, relationships are what allow you to build synergy and create quasi partnerships or alliances. And that's exactly what we do in real estate. So it's knowing the right people who have the access to the deals, knowing enough about what you're doing to vet or do the due diligence on people and then the collateral. And once you develop those relationships, then the investing really gets easy. It's hard for people who say, well, I want to go try this thing, in this case, this real estate thing. I want to go try it because, I'm smart. I passed all this stuff in school. I know how to work hard and study. And they can learn it, but learning something academically is different from doing it. And just because you know a lot of stuff doesn't mean you can go do it. It's more, again, about the connection, which takes its own time and effort. And it took me a lot of years to get there. But today, what I love to do is make that connection available for my colleagues who want that kind of security of a network and a platform that provides them that predictability so that they can breathe and have peace of mind, security about the rest of their life and not be always worrying about it.
Yeah, and I think that ties in, the Plan B concept, David, it really comes back to the freedoms that we enjoy. There's time freedom, financial freedom, relationship freedom, and I know you're an advocate of creating those freedoms. So, where I see this particular strategy finally making its use for dentists particularly is to create a sense of freedom so that they're not reliant on one particular thing. They're not single source dependent. They have their life raft up against the main ship, and there will come a time when they say goodbye to the main ship and the life raft becomes the main ship. So I really resonate with that. I wanted to ask you a little bit about the younger generation though, because for these guys, they may not have as much of an opportunity in practice ownership. We mentioned earlier that dentists and docs are graduating with more debt than they've ever graduated with before. The cost of entering their own practice is higher than it's ever been, so the barrier to entry is high. And so for many of these guys, their professional future may involve working for the corporates. It may involve even working for the insurance companies. So I guess for those guys at the other end of the market, the importance of a Plan B seems to be even higher again, because to create something that's sustainable and durable is going to require out-of-the-box thinking. They're going to have to go a little bit against the grain, perhaps. And I wanted to ask you your thoughts about the young docs graduating and equally the mindset that they're going to need to be able to adopt as they go through their career thinking about their own future. What's the thinking that they need to be adopting, do you think?
I think in general, Jesse, the mindset of the younger docs coming out of school today, and this is again general, there's always going to be exceptions, but many of them are more about quality of life early in life than maybe my generation, your generation, which we tended to kick the can down the road and just say, I'm just going to buck up and work hard and I'll get to that someday where I can just really relax and quote, have it all. And we know that's not a good way to live life either, because that someday doesn't come. So I think there's something in the middle. So I think a lot of the younger docs coming out right now really saw maybe in their parents' generation that, that plan doesn't work too well. I want to enjoy some life now. And that doesn't mean being cavalier about going into more debt or living some big lifestyle. I think they're just making some different decisions, which means that not everybody coming out of school today feels like they necessarily have to own a practice. And so that's a number one choice. That's a decision and not a bad decision. We often today have two income couples, right? They're putting off starting families, putting off getting married. So everything's being pushed back a bit. And maybe that's a change in culture. I don't know if that's good or bad or indifferent, but it is what it is. And maybe that gives them more time to get their footing on the ground before they start those families and do those things. So the corporate type of practice, maybe that offers an alternative that is needed today for some segment. Now, so that works fine there, but what about those who say, yeah, but I always want to be my own boss. I want to run my own deal. Okay, yeah, tougher when you have that debt and you need to learn the business side. So I think the road there, I would say is always mentorship. Jesse, as well as I do that if you want to learn something and really learn it well, going to school to get more degrees is not the practical way to do it. Today, I'd say, get the degree you need to get out in the world, and then that opens a door for you. But just to get more degrees or get an MBA in finance or business, I wouldn't do that. I would say, find the best person who is living the life, running the kind of business, in this case, dentistry, who would appreciate having a young apprentice. And that doesn't mean you work for free, but I would work for less than what I could make in corporate today if I was under the wings of somebody who really knew what they were doing. If I could go learn from that person, I would work for less for a while I learned from that person, because that kind of degree, real-time, on-the-job training from someone who really gets it and would be willing to give that back to me, for me trading some of my labor and time for that person, would be well worth it. Now, that could be in a corporate setting. I'm not saying it can't be. I think there are some good corporate settings where they have a good culture and they can definitely show a young doctor how to run efficiently. That might be a good training ground, but again, you've got to be discerning. Find the right one, ask around a lot, be choosy, or find a private practice mentor. And that could be a solo practice, or there's, in our country, and I think it's happening in Australia as well, there are now many kind of co-ops that are bringing private practice, multi-doctor, multi-owner private practices together and using the co-op to leverage back against the insurance companies to increase the insurance reimbursement rates, to leverage kind of against or to build synergy with the manufacturers and supply reps and that kind of thing to get the same kind of advantage that corporate has. Now, that's another opportunity. And again, the multi-practice, I think, for a lot of young docs is going to be the way to go, but they might be able to do it that way. And again, find a good group that has the right culture, the values, the mentorship that a young doc would need, and still have an equity interest in the right setting. It's different than what you and I grew up with, Jesse, but as I said earlier, it's a changed environment. So we have to be open to what's there and realize that there are great opportunities. We just have to look. We have to look for them.
Yeah, I really resonate with that, mate, because there's so many threads of gold there that I'd love to just pull the thread and see where we unravel it. But the mentorship and being able to work for someone for less, provided there's great culture, potential equity ownership down the track, and of course that mentoring, the ability to learn. So I guess if you were a new dentist today and you were graduating at the end of 2018, what sort of things and skills would you be looking to develop? If you could give yourself that advice as a new graduate, assuming you could wind the clock back and you're graduating today, what sort of things would you want to be learning as a new graduate today?
Gosh, there's Jesse, there's so much to learn. There's so much to learn at any stage of life. I'm always a student, always learning more and more, right? So what would be essential at that point in life? Well, I mean, it goes without saying that one always needs to increase their clinical skills. I don't know if I can go specifically into which clinical skills I would put out there. If you want to appeal in more of a boutique practice to those more affluent who don't care about so much insurance, they want experience, they want good quality, then you're going to need to up your game in both the cosmetic and the implant, higher restorative capabilities. That takes some time and effort. Again, with mentorship, with clinical studies, that's going to take a little bit of time. But if that's something you see yourself doing, then I would start early and just kind of chip away at upping your game diagnostically and also from a treatment standpoint. Surround yourself around those kind of people who have built that kind of practice. Again, find them, make sure that they're the kind of practice you're looking for. And those kind of people are great about giving back and also giving you resources about, well, here's where we should go next. So find those people to help you map that out. On the more business, or I should say even the personal side, personal development is a big part of everything in life, whether you're a dentist or not. And so I think the art of communication, let's use that nasty word, sales. Sales doesn't have to be a negative. It's not about manipulation. Sales is about communicating. Sales is about influencing people to do what's right for them. So learning about sales, communication, leadership. We talked about that great book, Turn the Ship Around, leadership. If you want to carry the torch in an ownership position of any kind in any business, learning how to lead versus manage, big difference. And yet I had no idea there was any difference when I was coming out of school. I mean, I had to learn these things by falling into the quicksand, many times, Jesse, and have somebody pull me out and say, here, read this book, oh, now I get it,
Yeah. I think I was in there with you, by the way.
So it's a world of opportunity, because I know it sounds to young doctors like, oh my gosh, man, I just passed the boards and got my degree and I've got all this debt, and you're telling me I got to do more. I'm not telling you got to. I'm telling you you should want to, because realize this: as much as the world's changing, and you might see these big barriers, up against you personally, that there's still few and far between who are going to do what it takes. Doesn't mean you have to be a marathon runner. Doesn't mean you have to climb to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro, because very few will even attempt it. So if you even get up a third of the way, you're far beyond what other people are going to do, and that's enough to put you ahead. And then you'll say, oh, this is good, and then you'll take the next steps, right? So don't look like you're chip away at the whole mountain in front of you and say, oh, I'll never get there. I can't do that. Don't look at it that way. Chip away at it. Go back to our words, be specifically intentional about your roadmap. Get advice from good mentors, lay out a plan, know what you want to do, get your spouse or significant other on board with you. Make sure that person has the same idealism about what life can and should look like, and don't have these higher expectations of grandeur about, we sacrificed all these years and now it's time to live it up. Well, maybe not quite so yet, quite not so soon yet, right? I mean, I'm not saying you have to live like in poverty forever, but just be prudent about how you let lifestyle build, because credit right now is easy out there. Even with people that have a lot of debt, it's still relatively easy to get into more debt. Be careful about adding more debt. Make sure it's debt that's going to add value and return on investment, and not to just be for consumption.
Yeah, I really love that. There's so many pearls of wisdom in that particular segment there, David. For everyone listening, I'll just say hit pause, rewind, and re-listen to that comment of David's, because there's just so much there that I know is going to be really incredibly useful for you. David, I want to turn our attention to the guys mid-career, because at the moment, for the guys at the end of their career, selling out, the practices are maximal value, they're expensive to buy, so therefore those selling them are attracting a good return on that. That window may not stay open.
I agree totally.
And so, I'm predicting falling practice prices over the next few years or decade. And for the people in mid-career, if they're relying on their practice sale to fund their retirement, that could be a disappointment. So what's your thinking around that, and what advice would you have to the guys who are mid-40s, 50s, and thinking, I've got another 15 to 20 years to go, how am I going to make this work?
Yeah, you got really two pathways to consider. And again, it comes down to who you are personally. So don't let anybody tell you you've got to do this or that. You decide first, what you like. If you really feel like, and I know some doctors like this, and I know you do too, Jesse, who are really, really skilled with their craft, and they love being solo, and bringing another doctor in would just probably be a nightmare for them, because they're so focused on their skill set, and it's just not the way to go. So if you're that kind of doctor and you're just like, you know what, I'm going to finish out doing my practice kind of really solo, and I'll keep the boutique practice, and I'll let the chips fall in terms of the practice sale value, because that's going to be the harder practice to sell anyway in any market, that boutique practice. If you're not willing to figure out a transition model, bring a young mentee in, and maybe you will later, but let's just say you're not. Let's just say, I don't want to go through that struggle. That's just too much brain damage for me. And I get it. You've got to be clear about that if that's who you are. So in that case, that doctor really needs to be building that plan B. However you want to do. Plan B means you've got to be building outside wealth, whether that's in other businesses or practices, or if you, again, not for you to go do it because maybe that's not your skill set, but you've got to know people. If you're pushing off discretionary income, you may have money in the stock market, paper products, but I wouldn't put it all there. That's just too big a gamble. You need to find some other tangible assets to put into, whether it's real estate or other practices, or practices combined with real estate. Your biggest key there is you've got to find the right people. Find people, build a network, get inside, find the right people and then learn about the access and build that plan B. For the other sector of the mid-career who have 15 or so years left, some may say, you know what, I would like to maybe take some of my equity off the table sooner than later, because that window will close. Right now, values are high. How long they stay, maybe a few more years, that may be it, and they may start declining. So there's ways to start taking equity off the table now if you're open to selling fractional interest in your practice. That, again, it's going to involve moving parts, it's going to involve partnerships. They can be done, but you've got to get your head in that game. You get great mentorship on that. You've got to learn how to or somebody's got to help you vet people, put these things together right. It's like multiple marriages. Get ready, folks. If you're not good at it, if you're not good at marriage, then don't go down this route, because it's just another marriage without the side benefits. So but again, it can work, but just eyes wide open. Nothing is perfect. Everything comes with another side. And you just decide which other side you're going to take, which other side, because again, you just can't say, well, this is the perfect utopian ideal way to go. No, nothing is. Everything comes with that side headache. So which one are you more apt to take on? What's your personality style that could do it?
Yeah. Again, ladies and gents, some absolute pearls of wisdom there. Again, once more, please hit pause, rewind, do whatever you need to do, because there's just some very salient points there. So if you are mid-career and you're thinking that you're the man or the woman who wants to go solo, then again, David's saying, start to build that outside wealth now, because selling that practice at the end may not be as easy in 15 years' time as it is now. You may not get the same return. And equally, if you're the sort of person who can sustain a dental marriage without the side benefits, as David says, then maybe it is perhaps time to start thinking about fractional interest in your practice. I think, again, really salient points. David, one of the things that when we have conversations, I really like your ability to assess risk. Risk in your business, risk in life, risk in dentistry as well. So I wanted to have a short conversation about risk assessment, risk mitigation, and this, of course, does tie into the Plan B to an extent. But as you're assessing risks for the docs in their practice, because I know you deal with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of doctors in the United States, and all of them at various points in their practice and their journeys, what I wanted to ask you is, what are the key risks along the journey? How do you identify those, and certainly what mitigation strategies or thinking would you be suggesting around that? Because I guess what's predicating that question is, there's a great quote from Warren Buffett, who everyone loves to quote, and I'm probably going to butcher this badly, but his number one rule for investing is preserve thy capital. Rule number 2 is remember rule number 1, right?
Exactly. Yes.
So I guess risk analysis and risk mitigation fits in with that. So I just wanted to get your thoughts around that, please, mate.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes along with market or business cycles. And, I talked a little bit on the front end earlier today about market cycles, and they're historically business cycle always cycles. We're kind of past due for one right now, but it's going to come again. The problem is that people forget about these cycles. And so we're in this 8-year kind of bull run. I call it a faux economy, meaning that I don't think it's not sustainable. There's so many fundamentals that are wrong, but it's kicking the can down the road, artificially pumping these markets up in the overall economy. And so a lot of people just kind of get complacent about, what we have today, it's just going to track on. No, it won't. Okay, so David, what's going to fall out? Well, any kind of market reset, it's all about asset devaluation. And what makes assets become devalued? Well, it's because of credit crunch. Well, what causes a credit crunch? Lack of liquidity. Well, what causes that, David? Well, it's like right now, the global economy is running on debt. This quote faux expansion is built on debt. I mean, the European central bankers and certainly the Federal Reserve over here in the States, it just bought so much debt that they artificially put a lot of money out there, and that money's fallen into businesses and into the stock market and real estate. So it all looks good, and people have jobs right now, but debt is just out there all over the place. Debt's ready to blow up. So when that happens, then the whole economy contracts and credit becomes difficult to get. It's exactly what happened in 2008 for a different reason, a little bit more about the housing subprime market that we kind of triggered over here in the U.S. Not proud of that, but it's what it was. But the essence of it is liquidity, lack thereof. And so what's going to happen, whether I don't care what your industry is or what your business is, but you've got to consider who are your customers, your clients, your patients. Are they driven? Are you dealing with like a lot of the middle class, good people, middle class, hardworking people out there that aren't working today, right? But they're like one paycheck away from like just going down the tubes. For me, my renters, who are my renters? Same thing. I mean, I have to be prepared for my renters not be able to pay the rent. So what's going to happen there? I won't go deep in there. I mean, I always have a plan B, but you've got to be thinking this way. Whatever's happening for you right now, hopefully it's more good than not good in your business and finances. But it's going to change. It's going to change. Do you have the margin? Meaning, do you have the reserve? Do you have the cash flow reserve, the capital reserve, or do you have access to non-banking capital, meaning private capital that could take you through the storm? Because those who get through the storm of the reset are those who come out really strong because you're positioned to come out strong. Those who are not, they get crushed. Good people, Jesse, get crushed. They lose their businesses. They lose their homes, not because they're bad people. They just got crushed because they weren't watching for the tsunami. It's what it is. It's like a tsunami. And when it hits, it takes one event, one global event somewhere, and it triggers. And it's a domino effect. And I don't care whose country we're talking about. The U.S. has no capacity left to pump the economy back up. I mean, we depleted all of our resources and then some in 2008. We have no gas left. So we're on fumes ourselves over here. Europe is not much better. China's got big problems. It's a global thing right now. So no one's protected. So back to your main question, what do? You better have some margin. I would not be doing major expansion right now, even though all the media points to great economy and everybody's working. I would be careful about expanding. I would want to be nimble, flexible. I would not want to have any short-term debt, callable debt that the banks could call in, because they'll call it in. Even if you're a good payer, they'll need the capital reserves. Make sure your debt that you have is fixed rate, as long-term as you can get, so that you can weather these storms. Those are my main caveats. It's all about positioning. First, a defensive posture, and then secondarily, if you can, be offensive. Because again, there's a lot of opportunity if you're not, fighting off the tsunami. If you're riding the wave, you can be picking up and actually getting a lot of this wealth transfer that will happen. It happens every cycle.
David, there is some great wisdom in those comments. One of my mentors always says to me, Jesse, you've got to play for position. And I really hear your words saying pretty much the same thing. You've got to have a defensive strategy as well as an offensive strategy. And I guess I know that sounds an easy thing to do, but of course for again, it comes back to the simple but not easy. It's going to require some strategic thinking. It's going to require careful assessment and a rebalancing of things if that's what needs to happen. And I guess taking your words to heart, it means thinking about that early, because when the tsunami is on its way, it's too late.
It's too late. Yep.
And so for people listening, it's an opportunity to get your financial house in order, because there will be a change, there will be something happens, and you have this opportunity to get it sorted now. So I really appreciate that. David, everything you tell me reminds me of the fact that having a great defensive strategy and a great offensive strategy reminds me of your wonderful ability to play tennis very well. That was perhaps the clumsiest segue that I've used in quite a while, but I did want to just quickly ask you about your tennis, because you are known almost universally as someone who enjoys a game on the court. And I wanted to ask you really briefly, because I think there are great parallels between sport and business. This is really where I'm going. What I wanted to ask you is, what lessons has tennis taught you in your business life and financial life? Because I think the inner game is as important as the external game. I'm curious about that.
Yeah, no doubt about it. The inner game is actually, I think, more important. But fundamentally, number one in any sport, it's preparation. It's preparation. It's anticipation, preparation. In this case, don't let the ball play you. You got to play the ball, and to do that, you got to prepare in advance. It's about weight transfer. So again, which is all about position. So if you're in the right position, you can weight transfer. And then it's also, again, we talked about being defensive and also offensive. So there's times when you have to play a ball that you're more defensive in regards to how you play that ball back. There's other opportunities that come to you, and it's an offensive shot. Can you make those? Are you prepared to make those? I think that's the analogies I would use.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for indulging my clumsy segue.
That's good.
David, there is so many wonderful things that we've been able to cover today, and you've authored a couple of books, but the one that I really want to talk about is High Income to High Net Worth. That's a fantastic read for docs in particular. It's a fantastic read for everyone, but for audience on this particular show, if they wanted to get a copy of that book, is the best place to go Amazon, or is it best to go to your website? Where's the best place to grab a copy of that?
Yeah, just the easiest places would be Amazon. From High Income to High Net Worth for Dentists. Yeah, it's on Amazon, so that'd be the quickest place for someone to get a copy.
Yeah, look, it's a wonderful read, guys. I'd really commend it to you, because everything that David shared with us on this particular episode, he goes into in a lot more depth, a lot more detail, and you'll be able to get a practical strategy and get that roadmap that he was talking about, so that you can position yourself really well for your own future. David, you are an incredibly generous man. You're not only generous, you're incredibly wise and have tremendous insight into not just the world of dentistry and business, but life in general. And from all of us here on our show, I just want to say thank you to you for taking the time out of your day to come and hang with us. You are a wonderful man. Thank you.
Oh, Jesse, thanks so much. I think the same of you, and it's always a pleasure. So thanks for having me back.
Thank you, mate.
Thank you for listening to the Savvy Dentist podcast with Dr. Jesse Green. For more free tools and resources, join the free Facebook group. Visit drjessegreen.com/Facebook. And for more episodes, visit drjessegreen.com/savvydentist.